Thank you. If I can call the Capital Program and Oversight Committee to order. I believe in an unusual twist, we have public speakers. So I'd like to ask, please, Ken Jock DeGruff, I think is the first speaker? Reverend. Oh, Reverend, I'm sorry. Reverend Jock DeGruff. Thank you. My apology.
How have you been? Good afternoon. I'm here today to, one, offer congratulations to the MTA for the passage of the historic legislation that includes its mentor program, the surety bonding, and the union transition program. Since I've last spoken before this body, I've received recognition by the City of New York as the MWBE Advocate of the Year, so I bring the weight of that title to these salutations. And I want to particularly comment at this time when some are reviewing your tenure, Mr. Chairman, to say that this is a historic moment and it's a threshold. So to all of those who are involved in the passage of the legislation, the board members, committee members, Diversity Committee Chair, Dr. Metzger, and to Mike Garner, we want to congratulate you on the role that you played. We were not supplicants on the sideline. The minority and women-owned business community not only testified at the first Diversity Committee hearing when Mike Garner was first installed, but we also went to Albany and met with elected officials and in the communities and lobbied on behalf of this legislation. So we come today as partners, not with our hand held out palm-wise, but extended as friends. We have just a little advice before I take my seat, and that is that for this legislation to have full meaning and impact and success, we think there are three things you ought to be mindful of as you go forward. One, that it ought to have accountability and transparency, that the continued reporting in a public and timely way is critical to the success of this program. There are people who are behind us, who are waiting and have great expectations of this moment, and timely communications is critical. Two, that it's across all those divisions, not in some divisions but not in others, but it moves across all divisions. And lastly, that the communications are a two-way street, that we are in readiness to advise, to suggest, to offer comments, not as opponents or adversaries, but as partners. And we stand willing and able and ready to help. We're just a phone call away. Thank you and continued success.
Thank you, Reverend. And we'll have a fuller discussion about this afterwards, but I would thank both for the comments and but also the constructive nature of the suggestions that are there. Much appreciated. Sandra Wilkin is our second speaker. Sandra?
Good afternoon to you all. Once again, I send greetings on behalf of Women Builders Council and like to congratulate Chairman Jay Walder, Susan Metzger, Ron Saporita, Michael Gardner on developing the MTA's first mentor small business loan, surety bonding, and union transition programs. The MTA's efforts have aligned with Governor Patterson's and state legislative leaders' vision for increasing contracts awards to New York State certified MWBDEs. These programs will allow these business enterprises to participate at the MTA and will enhance the way MTA will be doing business. This is clearly a landmark program for New York State. Once again, thank you.
And again, thank you for recognizing the effort. Let's move to the meeting, and I think as we get into it, there is a presentation discussion of the small business mentoring program that I'd like Ron and Michael to do. But before we get to that, if I can ask for approval of the minutes from our last meeting, please.
Mr. Chairman, could I make an amendment to the minutes?
You can offer an amendment.
I can offer one. I'm sure it'll be. I'm sure it will be seconded. Under the discussion of positive train control under the Long Island Railroad, it says Greenpoint instead of Greenport branch. So I would recommend that it be changed.
I think we probably can accept that one, Andrew. Thank you. Second? You in favor? Thank you. The committee work plan is a topic that I think for as long as I've sat at the table, we have, I've brought up the committee work plan and we've passed through it in just a moment. But I'm going to ask everybody to please stop here for a couple minutes, because I think Linda is coming back importantly to set our direction in the work that we're doing. And I think more than anything else, this is the place that we should engage as a committee with Linda in doing that and ensure that we are comfortable with the direction that's being set. It's then her responsibility, of course, to carry that out as an executive function. But this is the place for that discussion and for that guidance, and we should take a few moments on it.
Thank you. So in developing a proposal for the work plan, one of the things I did was went back to the work plans of the 90s. And so my proposal is a little bit in line with a back to the future kind of discussion, because originally when we set up the program, it was more than just monitoring. We were setting up a lot of management practices, which were regularly reported on at CPOC, as well as, making some brand new investment decisions, and a lot of analytic rigor was placed on those kinds of decisions. Over time, however, we moved more and more to a monitoring function with some programmatic looks, but mostly monitoring. The large percentage of the program was monitoring. But given where we are now, with a program that's much more mature, with a lot of our bread and butter work not requiring a lot of monitoring, with new kinds of jobs like the megas that do require monitoring, with a program only funded for 2 years, and we have to try and look to self-generate savings to the extent possible, it seemed like a really good time to take an opportunity to think about how we can address the work plan that comes before you to provide better value for the capital program. So that's what I want to suggest here. And what I'm suggesting in terms of the emphasis is to, of course, keep monitoring, which we would, so I'm dividing the emphasis of the program into two pieces. Monitoring, which I'm suggesting is about 40% of the effort, and improving efficiency and effectiveness, which is about 60%. And I'll talk about each of these individually, but monitoring is going to be based on the risk of the projects, and areas of efficiency and effectiveness are the kinds of analysis we've been starting to talk about here. Let's start by talking about monitoring. So this is very much along the lines of the recommendations that were made by the Inspector General at our last meeting, where we would monitor the risk-based projects. Remember, risk-based are large, complex, significant uncertainties, significant customer impacts. So we would continue to monitor the mega projects. We would continue to monitor new technology projects and security. And then we would determine other areas to monitor based on something I'm calling a traffic light report, which you haven't seen yet. I would start rolling that out next month, and what we would do is we would look at areas of the program against cost, schedule, and contingency spent as compared to progress made, and identify projects that are what we would call red projects, projects beyond where we would hope them to be. And we'll go back to something that used to be done in the capital program with the agency writing a page about what's going on with that project. The project would be reviewed by the independent engineer, and if it was our thought or the board's thought that that project should then move into monitoring, it would move into monitoring. So it's a more real-time evaluation of what gets monitored, as opposed to just saying everything in, for instance, infrastructure, line structures will get monitored. We would just be focusing on those projects that we see as having issues. As the IG suggested, the monitoring would be a trust but verify. So monitored reports would be written by the project. That doesn't mean they have a free hand. We've already started meeting next month. We are monitoring Capital Construction's report. We've started meeting with them about, if not a template, certainly areas that we expect to be discussed. As the IG had suggested, we want to know about major issues, with their impacts and potential mitigations that are proposed. So it'll be focused on really what the board needs to pay attention to. It'll be done in conjunction with discussion with the IEC so that it reflects, hopefully, not only the project's view on what those issues are, but the IEC's. And to the extent that we need to supplement, there'll be a supplemental report by the IEC if they feel that the project itself is underestimating the issues that the board needs to be aware of. And then we will, any follow-ups where a mitigation is promised to occur at a certain point, we'll have a regular section of the CPOC book devoted to those follow-ups. So we won't have to wait until the next time that project is coming for monitoring. We will regularly follow up. And we will continue to do risk assessment on the large complex projects as we had originally talked about. So that's the monitoring section, more or less as we have been doing, but smaller and much more targeted with the agencies very heavily involved in their own reporting. Next comes to how I would propose that we improve efficiency and effectiveness. So one would be to review high-spend asset areas with the goal of both continuing to implement the renewals effectively but also efficiently. So we would explore ways, it's similar to what we brought to you on track last month. We would look at the program, benchmark the program, look at where there are opportunities to do the program more efficiently with the goal of reducing the cost of implementation to the extent we can continue to implement effectively but reduce the cost. Those savings can be applied to, for instance, year 3 of the program where we currently have no capital or minimum capital funding in place. So that's the notion of this element of efficiency and effectiveness. The next is, and we talked about this a little bit last month, is areas where we've had the same strategic direction and they're very complicated areas for a while. We spend a lot of money, and perhaps it's time to get a second opinion and take a second look. These areas are things like CBTC, vent plants, IT projects, those sorts of things. In these cases, both on the analytics I just talked about and this, it would be bringing in people who have a strong analytic, consultants who have a strong analytic capability or subject matter expertise to help us out. We can do that through a mini competition as a sub to the independent engineer, or if the job is large enough, I would actually propose to put out some RFPs to do some of this work. And we would use the board, this committee, as a regular listening post for what we were doing. The next suggestion is actually the back to the future. This is looking at the way we manage the program, and it's looking across the agencies for opportunities to make sure we're doing best practice in managing. So some of these issues perpetually are issues that the board has raised problems with. So you'll see on the list change orders. Ron, through a group of chief engineers for the agencies, has been looking at many of these areas, but we haven't been discussing them with you. I think that they are actually areas that we're trying to set standards on and are worth discussing here. And so it's a whole list of things that I would propose bringing here on a regular basis. And finally, there are just other program deliverables that the board is going to be interested in CPOC and that we would want to bring. So one of them is the mentor program, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. We're starting meetings with contractors to get their input on various asset areas where they believe we can do work more efficiently and effectively. I'd like to use CPOC to report back on some of those. We are evaluating the utility of project labor agreements for the MTA. I would use this committee to report back on those as well. These are all priorities that were set when we submitted our 10 to 14 program. So in a nutshell, that's where I would propose taking the committee. I welcome your thoughts and your input.
Does this, is this a harbinger of a watered-down role for the IEC, or is it going to continue or hopefully improve the robustness of what they do for us, because they're supposed to be the board's eyes and ears for those of us who are not engineering specialists.
Right. I think, as I see it, it takes the notion of an independent engineer and just makes that a somewhat broader landscape, and it says it's independent expertise that can help the board be sure that it's making the best and the most efficient decisions. So the engineering component of it will still absolutely apply to the monitoring and to the second opinion work that I suggest. But the analytic component I see as some of your top analytic firms working in conjunction with Charlie's Strategic Initiative Group and analysts that we have in the capital program that supplement, in essence, engineering expertise with really deep analytic expertise. So I see you as getting the best of both worlds. I'm not reducing the engineering support. I'm monitoring any of the projects we're currently monitoring. You need to know that people can actually tell you whether, trust but verify. You need to know that your verification is deep. So I see it as a real mix.
I just want to say that I really support what Linda's trying to do here for two reasons in particular. This is an agency that has layers upon layers upon layers of monitoring, both internally and outside watching us. Monitoring is worthless if it isn't directed towards trying to correct situations and improve performance. So by putting the emphasis on the fix-it and the do-it-better end of the equation, I think we are putting our emphasis on the right thing, recognizing that there shouldn't be any decrease in the expertise level that we have from our engineers. The other thing that I really like about the program that she developed is the concept of the project monitoring. By making a project responsible for self-monitoring, we're putting the onus on the people who have to make the corrections, on the people who have to fix the situation or do better, and that just encourages pride in the job. So I think overall this is a really good approach, and I'm very happy to see that she brought it to you. Thank you.
Any other comments on this?
So is the work plan going to then be changed to put these various reporting events into specific sessions?
Yes, with some of it being, issue to come. In some cases, I don't know yet how far I'll get, but next month I hope to bring a new work plan forward. I first wanted to make sure that this, aligned with CPOC's view of what they would want to see before I presume to do that.
I had one other comment. It's not on this specific area, but it's about the dashboard.
Okay.
Just very quickly, something struck me when I was looking at the Transit Committee materials this week from Michael Radnachano's area, and they had listed amounts that stretched back to prior to the 2005-2009 capital plan. And I don't believe that anything prior to that plan has shown up on the dashboard. I think the 9904 capital plan that did have items for both 2nd Avenue subway and East Side access isn't reflected, and I think it should be to give people a full presentment of the costs.
Right. Those are the dashboard initially. If I had my way, was just going to be 10 to 14. I was encouraged.
That's the nerve, Doreen.
I was encouraged by several people to include 0509. The reason why I was focusing on 10 to 14 is we had figured out a way to use the system to draw the information for 10 to 14. Going back was requiring a manual effort. So we put in, working with the IG's office that was very useful in helping us create criteria, we put in some 0509 projects. The exception, and it didn't start this way, but we've already recognized it, are the mega projects, where we realized we really needed to follow them their whole way. So if it's not fully up yet, they're working on it, because we had said the same thing. You can't look at half of a project that goes back far because of the time frame. So those we are amending to put the whole thing in.
Let me just offer a couple of quick thoughts. I am strongly in favor of the change that we're making to the work plan here today. I think the fact is that when I speak to many of the members of the board, sometimes many of us are frustrated by the sense of looking in the rearview mirror about what's happening and feeling frustrated about what may have happened, and with very little ability to actually look in front of us at some of the big decisions that are in front of us and being able to. And I think this gives us much more of a chance of being able to do that, which I think is critically important. I think the company also has over time bifurcated capital and operating decisions, and yet the reality is that those decisions impact one to the other. And I think we need a place to begin to bring some of that stuff back together again. I think some of what Linda has put forth here is very important in regard to being able to do that. And I think finally and I think Doreen really goes in her question to the heart of the matter. I don't think the original intent of the independent engineer process was simply monitoring. Having been here when this was created and being involved in it, and I think it is Linda's point about Back to the Future. The intent was to give us a much broader sense of expertise and an ability to be able to engage around the capital issues in a different way than the authority had been able to do before. And I think we've been challenged, and we may well have sort of found ourselves drifting into a place that wasn't necessarily by a conscious direction. And so I think, setting out a new direction and then being able to implement against that, I think, is very important for us to be able to do. I would also say, and the IG is in the back of the room, Barry and his team have been a very big factor in helping us to think through some of the issues. And on a personal basis, I certainly have appreciated the way in which all that's been done. And so we did have the IG to speak at the last meeting when we began to speak about this. This is carrying it forward right now. I think we've moved from the position that it has to be us carrying it forward, which is the right thing for us to be able to do, and very much starts by adopting the policy direction, and then we can move to the implementation of that policy direction. And our capital program will never be easy. Under any circumstance, we're doing hundreds and hundreds of projects, many of them complex projects in an operating environment all at the same time. It will never, ever be easy. So, we have to keep an open mind and a view of being able to adjust as we go along. I think this is a pretty good adjustment, and I thank Linda and her team for putting it forth now. So,
What was the question?
do we need to approve the new format? I don't know. I think we're okay.
Every other
Yeah.
one.
I don't think it's
Change to the work plan would merit it.
Right, approval.
yeah. So when we come back and you have a specific, so this is the direction, and Linda will modify the work plan accordingly. And again, I think we should make sure that we're making time at the committee to have a different type of discussion than we may have had before. I think that's part of this as well. Okay, commitments completions. Linda?
Okay, so you have in your packet, in the future this will be in the book, but it's not there yet, a streamlined version of a commitment completion report, much, much fewer pages than the old report used to be. But I think it gives focuses on all the information. As you can see, relative to commitments, which is this first page of the report, we have 81% of our commitments have been made on or close to goal. And what you see on the year-to-date agency breakdown is that which agency have had projects that have had some kind of delay to them. On the next pages of the report, we go over what the cause of the delay is. You may remember these used to be little footnotes, and you had to go back and forth to figure out what was going on. Here you don't have to do this. So the two delays for Metro North you'll see are from projects that are from 09 that were to be committed in 09. Two delays for CCC which are not critical to their overall path. And you have some minor delays for MTA Bus. I'd also point your attention to the budget chart here, which in this case shows that our actuals to date have come in less than that group of projects was budgeted for. And if you look, we also have a page that talks about budget variances, which is the third page into the package. If you look there, you'll see a number of projects that have had good bids. This isn't to say that there aren't some that went the other way. Typically, when the bid was, when the actual amount was higher than the goal, you'll see often it's because scope got added. But I think these attempt to give you the information closer to the charts and making it more at your fingertips. If you look behind the commitments, you'll see a similar presentation on completions. On completion, 73% have been on or close to schedule. Of course, these completions all are for projects in previous plans. These are not projects in 10 to 14 at this point. It's a chart, another circle chart. It's a few pages in. Next time, yes. I'm sorry. I already had that conversation.
We have a limited number of innovations in any one period.
That's exactly right. And on the pages that follow, we describe the delays. Notable are Columbus Circle and Charleston, things that I think you've heard about in the past. We also talk about the budget further in, and most notable increase is in the R160s, and that's actually an increase since there's still, it's on force account costs. They're still reviewing it, and it actually may not be an increase after all. So, but right now, it's an increase. If it comes down, we'll let you know. So this is going to be the direction we're heading. It will be in the book in the future. They will be numbered, so it'll be easier to discuss. Behind these, you'll see also required by our legislation a summary of our capital funding. You can see the almost all of the plans prior to 05, we've received all the receipts we expected to see, and then you see where we are against 5 to 9 and 10 to 14 with receipts still due. The next page provides all the detail. This isn't much different than the report that was provided before on the funding.
That's pretty darn depressing, though.
Well, but it will come in. Well, it will come in.
And if you combine, I think, Doreen's comment before about the dashboard and what we're doing here, I think there's an unprecedented amount of transparency that's really coming to our capital program now. I mean, I think both the detail that comes from the dashboard and the ability to be able to access it over the web and the clarity of our information that we're taking forward. And again, I think this is a big change that we should note. I mean, it hasn't been by accident. And again, it's been Linda and her team and in doing that. And it has taken, in many cases, a lot of hard manual work to do it because our systems aren't quite set up to be able to push a button and make something like this happen. But I think it's important that we're able to do it. And I, for one, this is the first time, and I've been going through these reports month after month, it's the first time that I was actually able to pick the report up and get a pretty clear understanding of where we were without really spending an hour or 2 hours actually going through the detail of the reports and any amount of questions that are there. I think Linda's also adopted very appropriately a standard which I call the 5 minutes and 59 seconds of construction, which is that on a close to schedule is 2 months of getting it done, and let's focus on the things that are really slipping outside of those parameters rather than the things that have small changes within that period of time. So this is their 5 minutes and 59 seconds.
Just one question on the last page, Linda. Yes. The capital funding detail.
Yep.
On receipts, I do not assume July receipts means receipts received in July. I assume that means receipts through July.
Yes, you're
okay.
Right. We'll fix that.
Okay, that's what I assumed.
Okay. Any other questions on this? And was there anything you wanted to, on the projects, either on the commitments or on the completions, or anything you want to call? I mean, you've gone through the format, but is there anything you want to call to the board's attention about particular projects or anything of that nature that is of either notable or of concern?
No, I think I did. I found it particularly noteworthy, the number of bids that came in lower on that page. There are a good 6 bids, I think, that were lower than we expected, which was nice to see.
Good. Okay.
on the schedule variances or the bid variances, you're doing those both up or down.
Correct.
So just because it's listed there doesn't mean it's bad. It may actually be good.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
And I think, by the way, I think the important part of that is, in the way that we used to do this before, if you tracked our actual commitments, if we had projects that were awarded above budget, in some ways it looked good for us in our commitment table. And this is the first time, I think, that we actually have a way of looking at that and saying, a project that comes in below budget, it's not that we did a bad thing, and we should get credit. And I think it's the format's coming together to allow us to be able to look at it in exactly that way, which I think is good. Okay. Then I think I'll take us back to really where our public speakers were at the beginning of the meeting, which is the small business mentoring program, and I'll turn it over to Michael and Ron to speak about that. But I think this is something that is a real success story for us right now, and we should be proud of what we've accomplished in the short term.
Thanks, Jay. Let me just say that we are at a very historic time and period right now at the MTA, in which we are changing the way that we do business. And change, but not only change, but effective change starts at the top. And I just want to personally thank Chairman Walder from day one when he came in, that he said that he wanted the SCA's motto to be implemented here at the MTA. There were people who were saying that motto did not fit. But Jay said that he wanted a proven model, and we are here. So I want to just say thanks for your support, because we are here at this given point in time right now. Also, let me thank Dr. Metzger, because the first day that I started here, she and the whole entire board has embraced me, which allows us essentially to achieve what our mission is. And our mission is to build our projects safely, timely, on budget, and inclusive of qualified MWDBEs. I would like to also thank the agency presidents who were on board and their reps, including Craig Stewart, Chuck Hansen, Isaac Washington, John Barrett, and David Cannon, and Kevin Tomlinson. Also, I would like to thank Hillary Ring, Risk Management, the IG's office, and Budget for assisting us to shape this program internally. And so, it is often said that superstars win championships, superstars win scoring titles, but teams win championships. And so we feel that we have a superstar team that's going to allow us to drive this program to where it needs to be, starting out with the CM team of TDX, Sinota, Fritz Construction, and Howe Industries. Can you please stand up so everybody can see who you are? That's our CM team. We also, let me say, Jock and Sandra, that we are going to move this process in a very transparent manner. This is not just our program, but it's your program as well. And so, that being said, we heard you when you said that you needed us to come up with some programs that would allow us to overcome some of the historical impediments that small contractors face. And so we have a loan program that's going to be managed by Colorado Federal Savings Bank. We also have a surety bond program, which is going to allow us to help our firms get bonding, and that's with Marsh. We also are going to train our contractors how to become better contractors and do business the MTA's way. And Bill Parrish is that person his company is going to be leading that charge into helping us shape our training program going forth. Let me also thank Ron Saporita. Ron was actually going to retire, and he was going to spend more time with his grandkids, right? But he felt so strongly about getting this program off the right way that he said that he's going to stay here until this program is moving smoothly. So I think that you should acknowledge Ron and his staff, including Michael, Lewis, and Irish Berman, for assisting us in moving this program. Let me also say that Ron is going to brief you on where we are right now in the program stage, because as one thing that Jay has in fact indicated, that once that bill was signed, he wanted us to move this program out in an effective and efficient way, and we are right there. Ron?
Thank you. As Michael indicated, we knew that we had to change the way we do business to incorporate more small DMWBEs into our program. We established the mentor program as an important part of our capital program. And we began work in advance of legislation. We came to you in January and talked about the program and used the time in anticipation of legislation to put things in place. As Michael said, we hired a CM on board. We hired Carver Bank now. In fact, you all, thank you very much. You you approved the award of the CM contract in anticipation of legislation. So when legislation, in fact, occurred, we were able to issue them a notice to proceed. We have the Carver Bank Loan Program. We've established internal programs for a bond fund and prompt payment mechanisms. The result of this is that instead of the bids going out next year, they'll be going out next month. Well, the small business program, entering program as we call it, required us to change the way we do business. In absence of change, we would in fact have to deal with multiple agencies, each doing things differently, different terms and conditions, different technical specs, different procurement processes, etc. So what that meant was we got together to break down barriers. We created a team of all the agency representatives and personnel in their engineering department, their legal department, and their procurement departments, the three key departments, of course, who in fact work very well together. And we'd be remiss not to thank our legal folks who had a major obstacle to overcome. And we've basically created unified terms and conditions. We've unified our technical requirements. We've unified our bid documents, pre-qualification procedures, work practices, and most importantly, we've put in place an organization to be flexible to change, because we know as we go forward we're going to learn a lot. We're going to have to be able to change quickly in order to respond to those changes. So again, thank you for your support in the past, and look forward to continued support going forward.
And I wanted to say also, I was so excited, I forgot to thank Lester, Legal and Lester, but also Rich Gans, who took on the task of commonizing our T's and C's, should be given a great hand also as well.
Questions, discussion? Clearly, Susan?
I'd be remiss not to point out our thanks to Mike Garner for his leadership and boundless enthusiasm and an energy level that manages to keep up with that enthusiasm. I also want to make a special thanks to our speakers today. Our minority women and small business contractors have been constant in their support, and not only in speaking up for us, as you did today and many times before, but for providing vision and expertise that helped us do all of this. So special thanks to them, and especially Mike Garner. I'll admit there were times when I wasn't sure we'd be sitting here.
Okay. Look, I think we have. I really do think this is a very good thing. I think we've undertaken it hard and aggressively, and I think that's terrific. And I think the thanks have all been given. Clearly, the thing that we have to now watch for is how are we doing in improving success with it? How is it doing in terms of improving our ability to be able to engage minority and women-owned and small businesses in the work that we're doing? And I think, as Michael and I talk about regularly, our focus changes from the input to the output, and to the measurement of success will be how we do in being able to do that. But I think we should be very happy about where we've gotten to today and in moving it forward. And we'll continue to have, as Linda has put forth, regular items at CPOC in which we're able to look at that and say, how are we doing in this regard? And ultimately, the statistics will have to talk. And that's our measure, and we'll do that. But I think it's good stuff. It's great stuff, actually. So at some appropriate time, probably after the election, I think there may well be a broader public event to recognize some of the stuff that's been done. But I think given the campaign season we're in right now, probably will fall into the month of November as opposed to another time. Okay. Thank you. Charlie, Amy, are you coming down or are you staying over there? You're going to stay there. Okay. One of the areas that we've been talking about for some time and that we're pushing out on is our new fair payment system. And I, in my discussions with Charlie and Amy, it seemed like this is the absolute right time to have a discussion with the board to get some early returns on some of the work we've been doing and think about the direction and strategy that we have going forward. And Amy, I think you're taking us through, so I will turn this to Amy's hand.
Great. Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to have this opportunity to brief you all on the new fair payment system project. And we'll first look at the genesis of this project. Then I'll talk a bit about the technology demonstration that we have going on today, as well as what our approach is to project delivery and ensuring success. There's a combination of factors that have led us to rethink the fare collection process at our family of agencies, both from a cost standpoint and an operating standpoint, as well as customer service. There are a lot of issues that we want to look at and address as we move to a new system. Our costs today run on the order of $780 million per year. That's everything, including the kitchen sink that support and operate and maintain fare collection across all our agencies. That translates into an average of 15 cents per revenue dollar collected. It includes the fact that we're required to issue our own fare payment currency, such as the Metro card or paper tickets and passes at the railroads, as well as we handle almost $2.4 billion of cash annually across all the agencies. That's $1.6 billion at transit for subways and buses, another $300 million at the railroads, and another $400 million in the cash lanes from bridges and tunnels. Additionally, at this time, we're facing the fact that the MetroCard infrastructure, which is now over 15 years old, most likely needs to be replaced, if not refreshed, within the next few years. As well as from a customer service perspective, we have the fact that our systems are all non-interoperable. All the agencies run completely independent systems. We might have joint ticketing, such as a Long Island Railroad ticket has a MetroCard on the back, but they're not interoperable. You can't use the same railroad ticket to buy a ride on the bus or vice versa. And there's no one standard of fare payment system across all our agencies. Also, with the MetroCard technology, we're facing relatively slow fare transactions on board the bus, which is creating relatively more passenger queuing and therefore increased dwell times and therefore issues with bus service. There's also complexity with the railroad system, which are essentially ungated platforms, and therefore on top of the fare payment system, we also have to have an onboard inspection system in order to make that system work and protect revenue. And finally, as bridges and tunnels moves into the future with automatic electronic tolling, which I understand you'll hear more about this afternoon, we have to find a solution for our customers who use the cash lanes, how to translate the cash into, in essence, an Easy Pass account and a transponder in their vehicle. We have an opportunity now to provide a new system, one that is simpler, better, and cheaper. What do we mean by simpler? Relative to today's system, that no advance payment is required. You don't have to know anything. You can take out your fare payment medium, go and tap and ride our service. Also, that any card or device that's payment enabled can be used. What do we mean by better? That a single fare payment medium can be used across all our systems, that any one customer could take this one fare payment medium and use it on all our services on any given day, as well as the fact that customer can also choose how to manage that account, whether to hold multiple service passes on the account or just one, and when to use it. And finally, cheaper. This means being more cost effective to build, operate, and maintain our fare collection systems. Likely this needs to be based on a competitive market for hardware, software, and system integration, which we don't relatively now have, especially for MetroCard, as well as the opportunity to use processes such as transaction aggregation or other kinds of payment devices like employer-issued ID cards or even new forms of pre-tax transit benefit cards to limit our transaction costs. And finally, that it's future-proof, that every time we want to implement advances or changes in our fare payment system, that we don't have to do it on an all-or-nothing basis, that we can just change out parts of the system and adapt the new technology. Of course, overlaying all this is the need to provide equitable access to the fare payment medium that we use, as well as to our services and all the fare products that we offer. What we're thinking of is a similar transformation to the way that EasyPass transformed the use of the roads back in the mid-90s when the new system was introduced and gave a new way to pay at the toll plazas. What's making this opportunity possible? It's really a couple things. First, there's advances in communications. As an example, when MetroCard was introduced back in the mid-90s, as well as its advances in the late 90s, 3G wireless data did not actually exist at that point. Wireless data service was not even introduced until 2001, as well as there have been advances in fiber optic networks such as we're installing in the subway systems today. Secondly, the payment industries, in taking advantage of wireless data communication and other technology advances, have worked together amongst themselves, despite the fact day-to-day they're competitors, to establish standards for communications between bank cards or payment devices and the back-end processing that what are called the acquirers and the bank card issuers all use. So they've established standards for how the card is used and accessed at what we call the readers. The establishment of these standards have therefore made available more commodity-type hardware and software on the open market, and customization is not needed therefore. We don't have to depend on proprietary systems. Furthermore, this kind of thinking has application to all of our services across all of our family of agencies, subway, buses, railroads, and again, as a supplement to the current EasyPass system for our current cash customers. Finally, having these well-defined, commonly used, and widely supported standards will make it easier for us to adapt new technology in the future, again, without having to build a new system. And as new technologies emerge, such as 4G wireless or alternative payment networks such as PayPal, we'll have an easier and more cost-effective time in adapting to them. We're currently testing this type of technology out in our system on the Lexington line and 8 bus routes, including one express bus route that intersect with the Lexington line. MasterCard has sponsored and funded 2 technology demonstrations. The first one, you might recall, was back in 2006, which was on subways only, single ride only, and with MasterCard only, with cards issued only by Citibank. So it was an extremely useful technology to start us on this path. But what we're doing now in phase 2 is testing a broader use of this technology on both subways and buses, including the way our people use it now. We're able to test out pretty much all of our fare products for both pay-as-you-go and time-based and value-based pass, and our transfer system as well between buses and subways. It's a self-contained pilot, so when you use your card on the pilot, it can only be used on the pilot. It won't recognize a transfer onto non-pilot routes, but it's a large pilot running at 28 stations and on, as I said, 8 bus routes. We're testing the interoperability required between the hardware, the software, the processing, and even the people, such as our bus operators and station agents. And the revenue risk management parameters that we're using, which can be varied, in order to understand how we can use these to protect against fraud and revenue loss with this new technology. Finally, we're testing it with two key partners, New Jersey Transit and PATH, with the view towards a vision of interoperability among all the agencies so that you have a truly intermodal region from a fare payment perspective. On subways and buses, we've already reached almost the 4-month mark come September 30th on the pilot, and we've already proven that the communications, both wired on the subways and wireless on the buses, meets our needs for passenger flow, meaning there's enough speed and enough reliability that we can move the people through the turnstiles and onto the buses. As well as we have a chance to demonstrate whether wireless works in the subways or not. We haven't decided which we'll use, wireless or wired, but it'll inform the processes we decide on our requirements and looking at what our options are. At Fulton Street, we're using wireless as well as we did research this summer on the opportunity to use wireless underground, and we'll expand that research this fall looking at wireless at our open cut and otherwise non-underground stations. We've also already proven with this demonstration that the system is secure and can meet industry standards. There's an acronym here, PCI DSS. For instance, the MetroCard system only recently reached these new security standards required by MasterCard and Visa, and we've shown that we can do it with this technology on this pilot. We've also shown that the hardware, in particular the readers where the customers tap, are rugged enough and performing reliably. This is a specific concern with our buses, with the amount of vibration and mobility that they have, as well as in the subways with the widespread of temperature ranges that we see. Also, we've identified, as expected, a number of operational issues we'll, of course, resolve as we continue to plan out the project and define the system, such as how to improve on the bus operator and reader interface, as well as continuing to work with the financial community so that they better understand, and we better understand, how to process these transit transactions, which are high volume, low value, so that we minimize the financial risk to us. We're simultaneously, of course, working with the railroads with a view towards, again, regional interoperability and moving them towards the pilot phase. We're defining various operating models, both for off-board validation, which means you tap at the platform, not on the train, and on-board validation models where you tap on the train. And then combining that with new ways of doing inspection and researching what might be the next generation of handheld devices that could be used in this process with our onboard personnel. And again, as I said, the process we're in now is to define these scenarios with a view towards ultimately piloting these again with partners in the financial community. All the railroads are working together and working closely with them, Long Island Railroad and Metro-North. And I include Staten Island Railroad in here, and they're part of the mix because they're a hybrid. They accept MetroCard, however, they're an open non-gated system. And so they're interested in handheld devices as well. In looking to the long term and how we're going to manage this project for success, it's important to understand our approach to system development and managing this project. In the past, MTA has not consistently succeeded. We've had successes, we've had some non-successes in delivering technology-based projects. An assessment of prior projects identified two key areas that are critical to future project success, namely people and process. There are other areas, the technology and tools you use for the project, as well as the system itself that you're developing. But what's critical here is appreciating the priority and the resourcing that must be given to both the people and the process dimensions. As a result, for this project, we formed and are staffing a dedicated project organization, which I lead day to day, and I report to Charlie Monheim, the MTA COO. We've also retained Dr. George Koser, who I'm in contact with pretty much daily. He's out of MIT, but he is our senior technical advisor. He comes to us as an expert in systems engineering as well as, just as critical, open payments architecture, meaning he understands the banking systems at the back end, working with us to advance this project. And with his guidance, we're using a systems engineering approach to project management for this project. It's based on a widely recognized methodology that is required for all projects federally funded through the Highway Trust Fund. And although this one isn't, we want to use this approach because it is widely recognized and understood. And what it provides is a structured way of thinking from beginning to end of the project and how to apply in a disciplined fashion projects, tools, and techniques. By using this highly structured approach through all project phases, we can look to minimize both project risks, the cost and schedule, and the product risks for the system that we delivered in terms of the quality we supply and meeting the needs that are defined at the front end. For cost and schedule, the uncertainty there comes from working with poorer or better system definition or system requirements. And we won't set our cost estimates and our schedule until we know what is the system that we want to define. Similarly, in terms of satisfying user needs and providing a quality system, we need, again, to have well-defined requirements. And through two processes, verification and validation, that will be built up as we define the system and then built up again as we build the system, we will verify at the component level, the subsystem level, and across the whole system, that's the validation, that we've both built the right system and we've built the system right. The $110 and $100 bullet point there is George's reference to the fact that if you don't do a good job up front defining your system requirements and place the right emphasis there, in the next stage you might identify some redefinition that you need, or you might risk the chance of scope creep. And in development, then it might cost you $10. And by the time you get to implementation, again, if you've poorly defined the system up front, again, you risk the chance of scope creep or redefinition, or just being plain wrong, and then it's going to cost you a lot more. So we keep in mind the 110, 100 as we're focused on the 1 and not the 100. So again, I just want to emphasize that defining the system early, what we want the system to do and what we want to build, defining our project plan and our project plan clearly, is the key means to reducing uncertainty to risk and will help us through the challenges we face, such as the varying fare complexities of our various agencies, through the transition from legacy systems to new systems, as well as through the peer change management process we face, because the new technology represents changes both for the operations as well as for customers. And finally, equally important is communications, and I want to talk just a moment in conclusion about keeping all our stakeholders informed. First, of course, there are the MTA and the agencies, and they are directly involved with the project team, interfacing, and to some degree as we move forward will certainly be integrated with my project team in identifying user requirements and defining what this new fare payment system is. We, in fact, need to reach consensus on this up front before we move into the technical requirements and specification stage. Of course, I'll be reporting to the board regularly on progress and as various issues are identified on these important topics when I come back here. There's the broader stakeholder community, of course, which has a stake in the service we provide and the access through the fare payment system, PCAC, I saw Bill in the audience. Of course, strap hangers, rider councils are the ADA groups, the groups representing the disabled community, and others. And there'll be periodic meetings as well as an opportunity to have input into both the definition of the system as well as we move into the development and design of the system. We will have many, many, many touch points, and many, many times we're touching base on that. There are other regional transit systems extremely interested in what we're doing. Our partners right now, PATH and New Jersey Transit. PATH both accepts MetroCard and sells MetroCard on its property. We do manage the back end for them. And whatever we do in terms of replacing MetroCard, we need to have a conversation with them about whether they will move with us and in the same direction or develop their own system. Just as an example, I'm not suggesting they've made any decisions. Westchester B-Line buses, for instance, completely based on the MetroCard system. We need to work with them to develop whether they, again, are going to move with us towards the new system or develop something on their own. And there are many others, the JFK Air Train, the Roosevelt Island Tram, and so on and so forth, as well as such as Metro North Long Island Railroad and other agencies which have joint ticketing where a MetroCard is imprinted on the back. Again, in preliminary conversations, everyone is interested in moving to this open payment or open standards architecture so that we can be interoperable and interregional, and so there'll be great emphasis in these partnerships going forward. And finally, there are agencies and other parties interested in collaborating with us on this technology. And it might be somewhat new technology for us, but it's really technology that's already out there. For instance, taxi cabs already accept contactless cards where you can tap and go, not just swipe. And we've been in conversations with City Hall through Deputy Mayor Goldsmith, who's interested in the application of this technology and marrying ideas they have with use of transit. The Department of Information Systems and, Information Technology and Telecommunications, which runs the city's wireless service known as NICEWIN for NYC Wireless Network, and opportunities for us maybe to leverage that system into a more cost-effective carrier for this project. Also, the Department of Consumer Affairs, which serves through many projects the unbanked, meaning those who do not have access to bank accounts, let alone bank cards, a population of our customer base that we need to make sure to serve and, again, provide them equitable access. So with that, thank you. And I'll take questions if anybody has any.
You have a question, and you may have the floor.
Amy, thanks. It's a great presentation from the rider standpoint, and I'm sure from everyone around the table, we can't wait to get rid of the MetroCard system and move to something like this. We're paying people to clean turnstiles, and MetroCards fail, the sensitive stripe goes, and this is so much smarter, and it'll allow interoperability. The question is, in one of your earlier slides, you mentioned either refresh the MetroCard system or move to this. I hope we're not really seriously considering refreshing the MetroCard system.
That was just a reference to one of the many reasons why we're moving to the new technology. We're at a decision point pretty much on which way we go with MetroCard. Clearly, we'll do what we need to do to protect it as our revenue system right now for transit.
And not the least reason to move is the unbelievable dwell time that the bus fare boxes take to process a MetroCard and spit it back out to the user. It's, sometimes it's 2 seconds, with 30, 40 people. That's minutes lost on that bus trip. So Godspeed to you.
Thank you.
Alan?
Amy, you had said in the beginning of the presentation that it costs us $15 out of every...
15 cents on every
dollar.
Right, on average.
Where do you project we end up at the end of this process?
Again, as I said, until we've defined the system, the concept of the system, and move to translating that into technical requirements, that's when we'll start putting on cost estimates, as well as when I provide cost estimates, giving you a plus-minus range of certainty as we move through this structured process that I was talking about, systems engineering approach. Each time we update the cost estimate, we'll be able to give you a number that has a smaller and smaller range of uncertainty associated with it, as long as we followed this structured approach. So we haven't set a goal in improving that 15 cents average, but I can tell you every penny saved saves us $50 to $55 million.
And how long will it be before you get to that point?
To being able to provide a savings estimate, or being able to... Again, when we provide the first cost estimate, which will come the first time with the greatest uncertainty when we're done defining the system, which is all we're working on till the end of this year, the end of the fourth quarter, then we can have that conversation.
Doreen?
Good to see you here. What percentage of our user system is unbanked? Do you have a sense of that?
We don't know, because we have both unbanked cash customers and people who just prefer to use cash. They don't want to use their bank card in our system. I only know that in the city statistics or estimates of the unbanked is 13% of the population.
And how do we handle tourists?
In the future, if we're on open payment architecture, if they can use their bank card, debit or credit as well.
So this is going to be a very wide-ranging number of banks that are are going to be signing up to this.
Right. Any bank that issues a qualified or compliant contactless bank card, not all banks do today, but the largest ones in our region do. Chase and Citibank and Bank of America has announced that they're going in the same direction and issuing contactless cards.
But again, correct me if I'm wrong, but the intent of this is actually not to be specifically signing up banks, but to be using the standards that we all have come to accept. So we don't ask ourselves, how are tourists buy something at Macy's because they're able to take out their credit card and it's accepted in that architecture at Macy's. And the goal of this is to actually have the same answer for the transit system as well. The difference to what has been done in the past was it always was proprietary, it always was separate, and that's what we're really seeking to be able to get to. Now that is, that's what we have to work through to make sure we get there, but that would be the goal of that.
Yes, and in this second phase pilot, we are accepting all Visas and MasterCards, without regard to bank.
Right.
And how many more systems are we going to be rolling? It's 28 right now, 28 stations that.
This pilot will finish November 30th, and again, it's a technology demonstration, and we're already beginning to plan the wrap-up of it. So it won't move immediately into deployment. It just identified for us what works and what items need more work.
Mitch?
Issues. With regard to the commuter rails, which is obviously a whole different aspect to some degree, have you, obviously the issue of the ungated access is a significant issue, either taking it as a positive or taking it as a negative, but it's a significant issue in how you implement any new type of system in that regard. Have you thought about how to solve that problem inherent in that, or do we think about putting in a gated system at the commuter railroads?
We are looking at gating only at certain stations. In other words, there's many different ways in which you can think through tap in, tap out on the railroads, which you need to do because they're distance-based fares, so you have to have both the origin and the destination. But you can do it. There's various models for it where hypothetically you could tap out maybe only at the major stations, for instance. Similarly, there's different types of hardware and systems you can use, both what are called the validators or readers as well as gates. You can have virtual gates that are long channels and don't have paddles. So we're exploring really all of those, but trying not to get lost in the variety and hone in on a finite set of scenarios. So for gating, we're just looking at or considering, is it at all possible to gate at the major stations, Grand Central, Penn Station, through some station passenger flow modeling. But what really matters is the revenue protection system you put in place and what we do on board. So whether our customers validate on or off board, it's what we're doing on board and how we have whether we have the customer validate payment. From a customer service perspective, currently on the trains, it's a conductor on both Long Island Railroad and Metro North, and it's considered a customer service and relationship aspect, I would say, towards the positive side. We also have onboard sales, which are cash only today. We'd like to move to, if we continue onboard sales, likely will, why not, but we want the card, not the cash. And secondly, there's a question of whether we're doing inspections so that if someone hasn't paid, they then can pay, but maybe they pay with a premium, or is it enforcement where they pay and there's a fine? And there's different models out there, for instance, with New Jersey Transit Light Rail, but no decisions have been made. We're just looking at different models for how best to deploy this system.
My understanding is there are some transit systems that use the onboard person, for lack of a better term, as an enforcement agent as opposed to a selling agent. And those are two completely different tasks and may get two completely different responses from the traveling public in that regard. And so that aspect of it is obviously a very important ingredient in whatever system we come up to. The other aspect that is obviously very important and has taken on even greater importance, at least on Long Island, as Susan and I were talking, was the inability to collect all the fares today, which is turning out to be a bigger and bigger problem as we go along, and the ability to hopefully eliminate that issue from the transaction would be obviously a very important part of the situation.
Yeah, I completely agree on both counts. You've highlighted, particularly on the first one, this issue of it's not just possibly an operations change, but a whole dynamic change with the interaction with our customers if we were to move. I'm not saying we would, from inspection to enforcement as a way, regardless of making sure everybody pays. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, clearly the commuter railroads present a whole different set of issues than transit and buses do. Although, to some extent, the buses have a similar issue to the extent that we consider multiple door boarding. You end up with a fare protection issue, not that different from the kinds of fare protection issues you might have on the commuter railroads. The intent is to, and the work is going on now, on developing some technology/operational pilots to do on the commuter railroads to test some of the more promising ideas in this area. In addition, a lot of hope is being held out for the development of smartphones and the extent to which smartphones may end up becoming the next generation of credit card, in a sense, so that the credit card would just be a different form factor for what is currently your credit card. At that point, the smartphones become not only like the card that's being tapped, they also have the capability to be readers, at which point you have a whole new array of opportunities. We're monitoring the developments in the industry very carefully. Some of the credit card associations are already developing trials that they're doing in this area. We would hope to build on those, and as Amy mentioned earlier, the technology has changed a lot since MetroCard went in, and if anything, the pace of that change is accelerating on the back of the developments in wireless communication, and we may find that those changes actually change the game for us in terms of what we do on the commuter railroads.
One other thing I would suggest, notwithstanding sometimes their reluctance to get involved in anything that says MTA, notwithstanding my push, I would hope that at some point you could reach out to Suffolk County Transit. We are trying very hard to incorporate Suffolk County Transit and the railroad as a joint venture in many places on the island, especially for a large number of new development projects that are going to require a bus from the new location to the rail station, because obviously the rail station is not moving, but the location of the project is, and that's going to require a Suffolk County Transit implementation to get one from one spot to another spot. So I would hope that we could at least bring them into the discussion, because they may play a larger role, regardless of whether we ever get to regional bus. Leaving that aside, they will probably play a larger role in the lives of many Suffolk County residents over a period of time, and I would not want them to be required to buy two pieces of fare process while everybody else buys one, for lack of a better term.
Right, exactly, and I'd be happy to.
Okay,
and
thank you.
We will.
Susan?
I think it's really important that you work with the operating agencies for a couple of reasons. One is that each agency seems to have its own trials and happy moments. I know west of Hudson, Metro North is, married to New Jersey Transit, and whatever works for one agency has to work for the other as well. But I've also seen examples where problems that the operating agencies have might be solved by the way fare is collected. An example of it might be the Secaucus transfer station for New Jersey Transit. New Jersey Transit is dominated by open gates. Secaucus is a constricted gate. You need to have a ticket in order to get through. But the thing that has been achieved there is conductors don't have to go through the cars. And since that last little piece is by far the most congested, and the one where in many cases I think the conductors just couldn't walk through the cars, it solved the problem. Everybody has a ticket or they wouldn't be there. So to the extent that we can solve more than one problem, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's worth noting, I mean, as we've already noted, both PATH and New Jersey Transit are part of this trial. Amy's established a very strong working relationship with PATH and New Jersey Transit, and we will build on that and make sure that they're involved throughout this project.
It's good.
I think we're really at the edge right now of a really, really important step for our organization. I was here when we took the step with MetroCard, what seems like 100 years ago, and this is, I think, an equally important step in the way that we're looking to do it. We took a decision when we did MetroCard, by the way, that we threw our hands up and said we just couldn't deal with the railroads. It was too hard. It was too complex at that time. The technology wasn't up to it, and the like. And I hope what you're hearing from this is an approach that says, no, we're not going to create an island, but we're going to create something that actually we're thinking through the issues with all parties, even though we recognize that you won't necessarily paint everything with the same brush. And I think that's the important aspect of what I think Amy and Charlie are trying to bring out here. I think the other part for us is that this is now going to be a very active engagement with Amy and Charlie and this committee, because there are issues and policy decisions that are going to be coming up now that we're going to have to take early on and think about. We can't wait to the end of this process and say, gee, I never realized you were going to do this, or I never realized it was going to do that. As I think Mitch was pointing out a moment ago, the decisions that we take in this process early on have significant implications for the way that we interface with our riders and the way that our systems interface and other things of that nature. And we need to make them the early part of the process, not the late part of the process, and we're doing it. Obviously guided by Amy in terms of what the right time is for that discussion. But the right time isn't after we programmed it. The right time is in front of that when we can really engage around that.
Well, as Susan and I just discussed and we just voted to eliminate distance-based fares to make it a lot easier for. That's not a revenue-raising issue, just a transaction issue.
Right. I could not imagine anyone who would be more in favor of that than the representatives from Orange County and Suffolk County. Well done. Yeah, not lost on anyone. I think the last point I'd make about this is, in 2006, this organization started a pilot for this, and in 2010 we got to the second pilot on this. Part of what Amy is also telling you is that we need to do this carefully, but we need to pick up the pace of what we're doing, right? I mean, at the rate that we're doing it, the technology is changing faster than we can test the technology, so it's a self-defeating proposition in the way we're doing it. I think Amy's structured approach to doing this should put us in a position of being able to make some decisions, make them with confidence, but get on with something that is in a rapidly changing environment. And we have to keep that in mind. It is so different than everything else we do in our programs. As we're doing it, and again, I think just one more reason why this will be a continuing dialogue that we need to try and go through. Linda has pointed out that the chair has failed to manage this committee to time, which I think is, and I wonder whether there's a cut point to be able to hold some of the stuff over to next week. I actually think this was an important conversation to have. I'm glad we spent the time doing it. But is there a part that we could hold over and then try and wrap this meeting up?
Well, the next two presentations were on stations, and I think it would be easy for me to include them next month when you're also going to hear from Capital Construction Company. So if it's all right with the committee, we'll move them till the next meeting.
And then is there anything that we should cover anything else that we need to cover today before we adjourn this meeting?
I think you're good.
Just one minor issue, if you could just follow up with me. The borough president at Staten Island hearing said that he had given us some money for road paving around a bus garage and it never got done.
Okay.
Fred, any idea or? The question had to do with money from the Staten Island Borough President for paving around a bus garage, presumably Charleston, but don't hold me to that. And you could say you don't know. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Do you know any idea what the status is of that, or?
About it, but it involves the relocation of the utility lines down the road. The work in Charleston that we did, we basically built a sidewalk in, which can be easily removed and adjusted when that project goes forward. So we will be fully supportive of that when that comes into place.
Okay, it may be, do you want us to pick it up at the next meeting, or?
Yeah, somebody can communicate with
Or,
the
okay.
president what's going on, because
So, yeah, okay, we'll try and make sure that we do that. Anything else? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you.